my amazing colleague Jillian, Senior Copywriter here at CareerFoundry. Hi Jillian, thank you for joining us today. I'm super excited for your presentation already. And to everyone who's joining us, welcome. And I just want to mention a couple of things before we get into things, and Jillian is going to start her presentation. So yeah, we always like to know where you're joining us from. So please drop your name, where you're joining us from, in the chat on the right-hand corner if you're watching us in Big Marker. And we do this because we like to keep our events as interactive as possible. And also feel free to put any comments in there and any questions that you might have for Jillian throughout the presentation. And we're going to come back to them at the end. Yeah, and just another couple things before I let Jillian introduce herself. I just wanted to introduce you all quickly to CareerFoundry. And so CareerFoundry is the online school for your career change into tech. And we teach a variety of programs, and we teach UX design, UI design, web development, data analytics, digital marketing, and product management. And we guide you from complete beginner to job tech ready professional and help you land your first job in the field. But we're not like any old school, because at CareerFoundry, you get regular one-on-one mentorship from not one, but two industry experts. This is your tutor and your mentor, and this is our dual mentorship model. And on top of that, you also get support from an experienced career specialist who will help you with your job search. Apart from that, we have our job guarantee, which means that if you don't land a job within 180 days of graduation, we actually refund your tuition. Yeah, and if you'd like to know more about our programs, you can click the sticky note in the chat, which is also on the right-hand side corner, and you can book a free consultation with one of our program advisors. They're super lovely. I know them all personally, and they love to answer any kind of questions you might have. And yeah, just one last thing before we start is that I just want to mention that this webinar will be recorded, and we will be sending the recording out via email afterwards. So if you missed the beginning, or you want to rewatch this webinar in your own time, you will have the recording by the end of this week to go through again. Yeah, and just again, if you have any questions for Jillian, please post them in the chat and we will answer them during the Q&A later. That's all for me. So let's get started. Jillian, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Linda, for the lovely introduction. Hello, everybody. I metaphorically see you, but I'm going to be presenting. I can't see you personally. As Linda said, if you have questions or comments, please drop them in the chat at the end. We'll get to them at the end. Just before I fully dive in, I'll give you a little bit of an idea about how we're going to run through this. So welcome first and foremost to the event called 10 Copywriting Tips for Digital Marketers. I am Jillian Jacob. I will begin by giving you a little bit of an introduction about myself. Then I will talk about digital marketing so you can get a feel for the field and what we're broadly speaking about. A brief introduction to copywriting and where that plays in. And then we'll dive into our 10 tips. So I hope that sounds good. All right, kicking it off, here is an awkward picture of myself. As I said, my name is Jillian Jacob, and I am the senior copywriter at CareerFoundry. To give you a bit of professional background, I started out as a freelance writer back in 2015. I did a lot of private client work, and then I moved in-house to a company called Get Your Guide back in 2019 here in Berlin, Germany. And then I became a copy lead for a small startup called Axio, which was a wellness app. And now I am at CareerFoundry, where I've been since September. So that's just a little bit about me. All right, so we're talking about digital marketing. You might have seen this event or our digital marketing program and thought, that feels a little broad, and you wouldn't be too far off. So if you're not entirely sure what digital marketing is, effectively, it's online marketing, right? So it's the goal of brands showcasing themselves and their products in the digital space to prospective customers or clients. You might hear them called prospects. maybe not. It depends on your industry. So the channels that we're speaking about when we talk about this are typically organic social media, so Instagram, Facebook, these things, paid social media or Google, as well as campaigns, which you could see across Google or any of social media space, as well as email channels like this. What digital marketing by definition would not be would be an out-of-home campaign like billboards, flyers, because it's in person, right? Something I want to just draw your attention to at the bottom here, which we will get into more detail about, are metrics for success. What's important about digital marketing is that it's not happening in a vacuum and it's not happening in like as a hobby. There is a purpose behind all of the work that goes into building campaigns, that goes into building brands and advertising to prospective clients. And we'll get into all of that. All right. So specifically brand copywriting and the role of a copywriter within the digital marketing space is a little multifaceted. When we talk about copywriting in general, it's a persuasive art form where we combine a number of things. So we're combining an understanding of business practices and acumen, of course, writing talent, as well as just a foundational understanding of psychology. So there's a lot in that, and I'm going to try to sort of unravel that for you to understand all of the many layers. What we are doing when we combine all of these parts together is hopefully writing copy or text that is going to help convert our target audience or drive a desired action. I know this is a lot of information in the beginning, but I promise this foundation will help us later. So when we talk about desired action, this can be a lot of different things, depending on the channel, depending on the brand, the product, all of these things. So we could be talking about engagement, which we most often see on organic social. So that's the liking, the sharing, the commenting, all of that. Oftentimes we are talking about converting, which is typically buying. Right? It doesn't always have to be. Sometimes it really is just clicking through an ad. Maybe it's signing up for a newsletter. It really depends. We're going to be talking broadly about a lot of different spaces. So I will do my best to offer up examples as we go, if you can bear with me. So the brand copywriter specifically is going to be really paying attention to that brand identity, the brand integrity, and making sure that there's a clear brand awareness towards that target audience, as well as hopefully over time brand recognition due with a combination of design elements. So in the overarching field, a copywriter is going to be responsible for that brand voice. We're responsible for the tonality. So it's how we talk about the brand. It's how the brand appears in its written form. It's its personality. It's its identity. Again, that will combine with design for that entire look and feel. So a small note about UX for those of us who are curious about UX writing. It is quite a different sport. So my background is, of course, in brand copywriting. So I can speak on UX writing. I have some experience in it, but I will be coming from a brand copywriting perspective. What is it? It's writing kind of micro copy for the digital product space as opposed to the digital marketing space. So this is usually a website, an app, things like this. It's also a booming industry as technology just keeps on taking off. So I will touch on it just a little bit, but if you do have questions about UX writing, really consider leaving them in the comments and we can touch base on that later. So let's get into the tips. I know that was a lot of a large crash course, but now we can get into our tips. Number one, it seems like a logical starting point would be on the hook. I think most of us are probably familiar with this, but the hook is going to be that first sentence, that first headline, that first piece of communication or impression that we leave the audience with. And this is, as I think most of us know from personal experience, whether writing in the digital marketing space or not, that's kind of the first and potentially only opportunity to really grab an audience's attention. Meaning there can be a lot of pressure for somebody who maybe isn't super confident in their writing abilities just yet. You might find you're consistently stuck in that first line. Don't panic. If anything, I would say you can do that part last. If it helps you, write out the rest of the content that you need and say your newsletter, say your organic social caption, get all of that kind of polished. And then once you have the real meat and potatoes of what you want to say, then maybe consider going back to your hook and think about how you can put a little bit of emotion behind that, just to really punch it up and grab some attention. Or if you're not sure, you can ask a brand copywriter, or you can ask another colleague who might have some thoughts on the topic. I'm not going to get too deep into it due to time, but since we are talking about attention, the other challenge we might run into is losing that reader attention midway through the body of text that we've written. There are different things we can do to bring that back. Maybe we do hark back to the hook. Maybe we tell a personal anecdote. Maybe we switch up our kind of sentence structure by using short sentences and then long sentences. Maybe we add an intelligent or well-placed line break. There's a lot of different things we can do to just kind of punch that up. But those usually come towards the later stages of writing. So tip number 2, I think I briefly touched on this, but think emotionally. Don't be emotional. What I mean by that is we are human beings that are writing for other human beings. So don't be afraid to really dig into the headspace of your audience. Don't be afraid to try to use relatability to grab that attention and hold that attention. Depending on your brand, maybe there's room for a sense of humor. If you are a government, probably not. But if you are writing for more of a lighthearted brands, then you can play with things like that. So the main reason that we want to kind of think about emotion is not to be overly persuasive or pushy. It's because ultimately we are storytellers. We love stories. Everybody. Humans love stories. That means there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And by telling a story, the story of our brand, that's going to help us build out a full-blown concept that people feel like they can identify with. And specifically when we look at kind of the buying patterns of younger customers, such as Gen Z and millennials, we know that the trend now is that they do want to buy from companies that they feel they can align with on a moral level. That's emotion, and it's not about trying to fit into a certain box to appeal to an emotion inauthentically. It's about knowing who your target audience is and appealing to them by meeting them where they're at. So ultimately, what we want to do is be human, write like a human. Ways that we can kind of learn to do this are through research. So you might have a complex relationship with the word research, depending on your days in university, but it's extremely important. And in fact, it's probably the second thing you're going to do as a copywriter after understanding what your task at hand is and what needs to be done and what kind of those ultimate goals are. What are we going to research? We're going to research everything. Obviously, we don't always have as much time as we'd like to have, but time allowing, there's a lot of places we can start. So number 1, let's start with the product. We need to be able to answer some really basic questions about it. What is the product? How does it work? What does it do well? What does it not do very well? This is also important. It's honest. It's real. We need to know what all of that is. We need to know how it works, and we need to know why it's going to be beneficial for the people that we're writing for, because we don't want to waste their time. We want to make sure that people are gaining value from what we're doing. So that brings me to audience, right? We are always writing for somebody else. And this is something that sets us apart from creative writing. So we need to know who we are writing for, and we need to know that audience very well. You don't need to be a member of that audience in order to understand them, but you do need to research. So places you can start, whether you're working with a private client or you're working with in-house like myself at a company, there should really be documentation on these things. So there should be documentation on the product, and there should be documentation around your target audience. Oftentimes, hopefully, you will have customer personas. These are not law, but they can be helpful. So customer personas are hypothetical personas that embody your kind of average customer. And typically there are multiple ones of these per brand, as most brands appeal to like a wider kind of demographic or series of audiences. And you'll get some really nice information there, such as, what these audiences' lifestyles look like, what they are kind of hoping to do, what they might be a little bit nervous about. And understanding all of this information is going to help you to build out that story of why the product that you have is going to meet that person where they're at in order to improve their quality of living and get them to where they're trying to get, right? So that's kind of all about knowing your strengths, knowing the product strengths, knowing also the weaknesses, and then kind of leaning into those areas where you can really help your audience. What this really gets to the heart of is the idea of not only making sure that the writing you do is, of course, ethical and correct and on point, but that it's well-informed, because I think I use the metaphor of like the child who has the book report for the book they didn't read. While it might be mildly entertaining, it is clear when somebody is writing about something that they don't really know a lot about, and you're going to lose trust right away from your audience if you don't appear to have the expertise you claim you do. So research. This is a little bit high level. If you want to learn more about research and how you can kind of do that, you might want to consider our free short course in digital marketing or the digital marketing program. Okay, tip number 4, back that claim up. Through your research, you're going to come to, you're going to have a lot of information, right? You're going to have a lot of notes at the end of this, and you're going to have a few different paths you can go down in order to paint that picture of how effective your product is, what it can do well. And there's a lot of different ways that you're gonna make claims, like based on the research you found. Maybe you find that like your product compared to other products on the market is the fastest, is the cheapest, is the most certified. It just depends on what you get from your research. Once you put that information out to your audience, we want to respect their intellect, which means that we want to back that up. You can't just, this is what separates us from people who just make sweeping statements that are not proven and therefore very potentially untrue and therefore harmful. So make sure that what you're saying is, number one, true. I think that goes without saying, but in order to really emphasize that it is true, you can use a number of different things. You might use statistics, and then you can consider partnering up with a data analyst to visualize that data. We also have a data analytics program if that appeals to you. You might want to use social proof. These are testimonials. We see this on most websites. A good example would be LinkedIn. If you are looking at someone's profile and somebody's written a recommendation for them, you feel a bit better, right? You think, oh, maybe this person interviewing, they clearly work well with others, right? And so it backs up their claim that they are, in fact, an expert at what they do, and they have the experience that they say they do. So great way to assuage fears, great way to ensure product quality. And you don't have to do any little copywriting tricks, right? That's where that research can help you out. Furthermore, when we speak internally about backing claims up, if you are moving into copywriting, or you are a copywriter, or you're new to copywriting, or even if you're in digital marketing, the fastest way to get through a discussion between stakeholders who maybe don't see eye to eye on strategy or I don't know, the ways in which we might want to craft what we're writing is to ensure that what you're writing is informed, especially if it's informed by data. But if it's informed by your research, you can say, you know what, I read about XYZ thing on this website, and this is a trend, so that's why I did that. You take any kind of unnecessary emotion or potential arguments out of a debate in terms of the formatting, and instead you just stick to what's true, what do we know, and how can we showcase that best. Moving on. Excuse me, I'm avoiding choking in the middle. Okay, so tip number 5, know what you want to say. And the best way to do this is actually not to kill yourself over syntax and what's the best word and, like panicking about how to say something. You can clear your head very quickly by formatting your writing. This is most useful in terms of long form writing. This is probably not as common with shorter form writing, such as social media captions, as an example. So consider building a template. If you are regularly writing something that is a little bit longer form, templates can really help you out on a day when you're maybe not feeling terribly inspired. They also really help you. They give you your beginning, middle, and an end. So there's that storytelling. But they also help ensure that you are getting all of the information out that needs to get out, so that you've got all of that factual information. You've got all of those unique selling points. You've got your claims. You've got your research. It's all in there already. So then when you kind of move into your editing phase, that's when you're just sort of focused on finessing the language and making it human, making it fun, appealing to emotion. That's kind of the creative portion of the copywriting. This is also going to help you keep straight all of these like many metrics that I'm kind of throwing at you. Instead of keeping all of that front of mind, you can then, this template's going to ensure that you are always thinking about that call to action at the end of a longer form writing, which means you're going to be thinking about your audience, and you're going to be thinking about how they're feeling throughout this writing. And you're going to think about how you want to story frame that information to be not only effective, but generally respectful of your audience, and making sure that you're providing as much value as possible. So this will save you from spending all of your time going, but how do I say it? So tip number 6, save the bad send. It had to come up. Typos don't look cute on copywriters. Some of these tips may come off a little bit brash, a little off the cuff, harsh maybe. Typos do happen. Okay, we are human. You don't need to lay awake at night worried about potential typos. That said, when we look at the hard skills of a copywriter, there is a high expectation that you be an expert editor. The likelihood that you will have an editor full-time professionally to support you is lower. It's on the lower end, which means that you want to really sharpen those proofreading skills. The excellent news is we have wonderful automation tools now that can help you with that. I think ChatGPT actually might be able to do that, but Grammarly has been around long before ChatGPT, and it's great. I love it. However proud you are of your writing skills, you should never be too proud to refuse potential help, right? There's nothing wrong with having a second set of eyes to say, hey, there might be a more efficient way to phrase a sentence, or that's not how we spell this word that you chronically misspell. Lean on these tools if you can. It makes your life easier and it's faster. A couple other small tips just to help you in that copywriting process, copy editing process. Try to allow enough time to edit. Sometimes we are on a really tight turnaround, so it can be a rush. Typos happen. But if they don't need to, they kind of shouldn't, right? So make sure there's enough time to edit it once over after you feel you've already written it. And I'm a big fan of ensuring that you can sleep on this piece of copy and then wake up in the morning and look at it with fresh eyes to avoid that kind of rereading the same sentence over and over again and not processing it effect. Finally, something that it might feel a little bit weird in the beginning, and this really, again, it goes to everyone, not just copywriters. Read what you've written out loud. You can do this for an email you're going to send out. It doesn't have to be a newsletter. It can just be to, anything. I would say, especially if it is even remotely emotionally charged, I would really consider reading it out loud. It's a good opportunity to, number one, notice typos, but number two, if you read over a sentence and you think it sounds a little bit wonky, like it probably is. So it gives you a good opportunity to rethink how you could make that look. And then again, do that with fresh eyes in the morning if you can. Okay, so tip number 7. Of course, no brand copywriter presentation would be complete without discussing design. Design is, it's kind of like your left foot. It's extremely important. It's going to be very much a part of what you do, whether it's UX design or it is visual communication / brand design. But this is going to be very specific kind of couple of slides for our brand copywriters out there. This is an extremely important working relationship, and it needs to be, emphasis, a working relationship. So that means really sitting down with this colleague and ensuring that you can find ways of working that make sense. Everybody's different. Everybody has their own preferred ways of working. Designers and copywriters need to have the ability to both collaborate and work very closely together, but also do their own work and be able to kind of come back together and do that in a cohesive manner. So if you are writing, let's say you're writing an ad that is going to go into design, you need to just keep that in mind from the very beginning. It's going to be a very different process than it would be if you were, say, writing a report that will predominantly live in a document, or design is going to work around the copy. But if you're going to be doing something that is more on the creative side, maybe it's campaign work, maybe it's paid social ads, whatever it is, you're going to need to keep a few things in mind. So you're going to have to relinquish an amount of control because design will have the physical control. That's just the way it is. And you're going to have to therefore really trust each other. And you're going to have to be able to sit down together and concept together and build something out that utilizes both design and copy, because they're equally important. They just absolutely are. So in order to make all of that happen, find the best way that you can communicate with your colleagues. One other point here is that at the end of the kind of creation process, when you're really about to set to live or send over to the kind of sign-off stakeholder, make sure that you as a copywriter do get to sign off the copy within design. It is always this kind of back and forth exchange. And you're going to want to make sure that the line breaks still make sense, that like the way the copy is set in the design makes sense. And that is further part of that collaboration. To just dive a little bit deeper into the topic, I will try to make this quick. A couple of tips for somebody who's maybe a little bit newer into the field. This one is one of my favorites because it's easily overlooked. A designer is oftentimes going to give a copywriter a character count or character limit. When we look at a headline or a very just micro copy that will fit into an ad, consider a character range rather than a character count. The reason being, if we look at the letter W versus the letter I, they are technically both one character, but when we're looking at these like these ratio specifications within design. A W is physically larger than an I, which means that we're now thinking just a little bit differently in copywriting terms than we would be if, again, we were writing a newsletter where we just need to kind of like get the information on paper. So just kind of small things like that. When you are moving through a campaign or a series of ads, I think it can be really helpful as well to set timelines with your designer so that you are kind of both working on the task at the exact same time, so that you can just move a lot faster. You can get it across the finish line. Design can make the really very granular adjustments that copy is probably going to request. And you can kind of just knock that out quickly. I think it's a lot more pleasant in my experience than like loads of asynchronous back and forth over 2 days, if you can avoid it. Great. So that's just a little bit about design for all of my designers out there. Okay. So I'm just going to take a little bit of water. 1 minute. Okay. We've talked a little bit about this, but metrics for success. Again, this is what's informing our digital marketing strategy, campaigns, a lot of the work, all of the work that we're doing. Everything that we are doing has to have a purpose. Number one, of course, we are that liaison between our audiences and maybe certain business goals. But copy doesn't need to be like in this strange gray space. We can actually be very involved in the process, and I do encourage it. So before you begin with a ticket, with a campaign, with really any project, align with your clients, align with your, the stakeholder in charge about what our goal is here. What are we trying to do? Are we looking to gain sales? Do we just need, engagement and views? Is this a brand awareness operation? What is it? And furthermore, if we are linking out somewhere, where are we going? Right. So, we always want to think in that headspace of the end user when they receive the creative. What are they thinking? What might their concerns be? And if we can try to anticipate that before it goes out to the audience, then even better. After we have set assets live, especially if we're working with performance and it's like a paid ad or it's a paid campaign, don't be afraid to follow up with your stakeholders. Ask them how it went. Ask them for statistics and data so you can understand together what you think was working, what maybe wasn't working. Typically, you're going to be testing a number of assets against one another. So, just kind of get a feel for what we've learned so that we can do better next time. Furthermore, it's not always possible given time, but when it is, consider having regular tests that you run with the performance team or other stakeholders. It could also be CRM, customer relationship management. Maybe for writers, you want to run tests on your subject lines and see which types of subject lines people are more liable to open. So you might want to consider just doing that on a regular basis, obviously recording that data, and then also importantly, reviewing it so that we can iterate or edit from there. And hopefully we improve over time because, of course, brand is a marathon. It's not a sprint. This is, again, very high level given the time. So if you want to learn more about metrics for success, the free short course is really, really good for that. And if you're really excited about digital marketing, you might want to consider getting in touch with our program advisors and discussing the full program. All right. Tip number 9. We're almost there. Know when less is more. Sometimes the copy solution is no copy. What I mean by that is part of being, I think, a responsible copywriter is understanding that our goal is always to create the most impactful, creative possible. This is sort of, I would say, especially relevant for design collaborations. Sometimes we have, an ad that the concept will work best with little to no copy. We've seen this, for example, with ads from like Nike or Adidas, where it's very inspirational, just lovely imagery, and you don't really see any copy. Maybe you hear one line of dialogue, and then kind of at the end, the logo and a tagline. It's impactful. And so then that would be the responsibility of the copywriter and creative directors to say, maybe we rein in the copy in order for this concept to go forward with its best foot. So consider talking, collaborate with your other colleagues, and set potential ego aside in case it is proposed that maybe copy doesn't lead the project. It's not personal. It has nothing to do with your abilities, but sometimes less is more. This also is important when we look at longer form work. So with the newsletter, we should be asking ourselves if every single sentence in the newsletter is furthering our goal. What is our call to action at the end? Do we want them to apply for something, to buy something? Is it just simply educational? I mean, what is the purpose of the newsletter? And if is every single sentence in this newsletter bringing us closer to that goal? Is it effective? Is it a good use of our audience's time? And we do actually really need to be that kind of cutthroat with our own writing. So do not be afraid to cut down the copy. It doesn't mean it needs to be deleted forever, but consider throwing it at like the bottom of a document in like a graveyard for future use. Maybe it will be relevant later on, but don't be afraid to, as writers often say, kill your darlings. Because our priority is always going to be clarity over creativity. The reality is, if it's so creative that our audience doesn't really get it and doesn't really understand what we're asking them to do, it's not that creative, right? So clarity over creativity. Final tip with our most important feature. So this is controversial yet brave, but reading regularly. I know there's probably some people going, ooh, I don't really read anymore. You're not alone. I was the same for a long time. For those of us who are passionate about writing, you very consistently hear this, that you need to read to be a good writer. I'm not taking it that far. I think you can still be a good writer. What I will say is, I think consistent reading will show you in your own work and personal life that it really does improve your hard skills. So it can improve your vocabulary or your general sentence structure. And it also helps you, think in that storytelling fashion, which can only help your copywriting. And I mean, look how smart this dog is now. I'm also not going to say that in order to improve in digital marketing or copywriting that you have to read copywriting books and nothing else. Absolutely not. You should read whatever you want to read. And if you are somebody who's struggling to read, regularly again, I would say start really small. Start with books you really loved, even as a kid. Go to a bookstore and make a whole thing out of buying something that just looks really fun to read, and it's this big. That's what I did. And then it kind of came back after that. Ideally, you would want to read things that are relevant for your industry as well as privately, whether that's fantasy or fiction, whatever your preferences are. But, with copywriting, there's a lot of room to read about fiction and writing and storytelling, theater, even, as well as, psychology and then, of course, business books or just direct copywriting books. Really depends. In terms of kind of growing those hard skills, if that is what you're really looking to do, there's a million books out there, but there's also a lot of newsletters out there. I strongly recommend that you find copywriters that you admire online. most of them probably have newsletters. Follow their newsletters, check their website regularly. There's once you kind of pick up a couple of the books, you'll go down your own rabbit hole, and it's not as scary as it might feel, I promise. So I did put together just a few, like very few, a couple of books that came to mind as some of my favorite copywriting relevant books. I'm not gonna tell anybody what they need to read that doesn't have anything to do with copywriting, but this, I believe we're gonna link this somewhere or throw it in the email. Linda will clarify that for me. But here's just a few books for you to consider. They're all just a tiny bit different depending on what your goals are in terms of copywriting. Something else you might want to do if you're looking to improve your writing is actually handwriting again. Yeah, in the age of technology. A pen, a paper, and take a piece of writing that you really admire, that you really like, and just write it out yourself. Get the physical feeling of how that kind of constructs. And it helps you remember it a little bit better. It really does. As well as books, there are just so many blogs that you might want to consider as well. Again, newsletters, following people on LinkedIn. People are posting some really wonderful stuff out there. So just kind of all things to consider. And with that very, very lengthy presentation, I would open up the Q&A if we do have any questions. And thank you all so much for listening to my rapid fire presentation.
Thank you so much, Jillian. I thought that was such a great presentation, and I actually really enjoyed these tips, and I know that I'm going to use them the next time that I'm going to write copy for one of our upcoming events. Especially really like the tip about considering the size of letters. That's something that I never even thought about. I had no idea that the W is 3 times as the I. So really cool to know. Also the handwriting tip, such a good one. I feel like you just kind of forget about these things. So thank you so much for bringing that to our attention. Yeah, for everyone who maybe joined us a little bit late, we're gonna go into the Q&A now. So depending on whether you're watching us on Big Marker or LinkedIn, please comment in the chat, and then we're going to answer the questions now. Yeah, I also have prepared some questions myself that I wanted to ask you, Jillian. So you gave us a little bit of info about your background earlier in the beginning of your presentation, but I just wanted to know if you could maybe just share a little bit more about your background and basically how you became a copywriting expert, and maybe also when did you know that you wanted to be a copywriter?
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll probably start with the second one first because it feels more logical from a timeline standpoint. Is my internet connection there?
I can hear you perfectly.
Okay.
So
okay, well, apologies for my visuals here. Okay, so I did not know about copywriting for a long time. I studied English literature in university. I graduated in 2014. Marketing was not yet a thing that people studied, as an example. So, when I was young, I was in the US. I truthfully didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that I was really passionate about writing. And I kind of stumbled upon copywriting just sort of on the internet. I was just kind of looking into career opportunities for writers because I just wanted to expand that. And then I stumbled on copywriting, and I became really, really obsessed with reading everything I could, following blogs, signing up for newsletters, buying books. I mean, I'd wake up at 7 a.m. and just kind of read about copywriting. I was sort of shocked that there was something out there that felt like I could really finally build a career out of. So I got to work freelance writing. It was a slow start. I would say to anybody who is looking to get into it, it's probably going to be a slow start. the difference you can make is, of course, to become a real expert in a specific area, to really stay up in the trends, I think now more than ever with the direction technology is taking. But anyway, I became a freelance writer. So I did a lot of private client work, anything I could sort of find. I was on like Upwork, just like these forums, picking up small work. So you want to build up a portfolio as fast as you can. If you're struggling to build up a portfolio, you can also do spec work. So that is where you kind of just create hypothetical ads, or it depends on, what area of copywriting you want to go into. But when you do follow people whose careers you admire, you can try to mimic that kind of work, and you can put that into your portfolio. It showcases like a go-get-em type of attitude. It showcases that proactivity and that passion. And so slowly over time, I was building up that portfolio. I was trying to network. I was going to a couple of events. This was pre-pandemic, so I recognized that it was a little bit difficult for people for a while there. Go to events if you can. And then eventually I had built up a client base, and I liked it, but I wanted to grow a little bit faster. So I then moved in-house, where I felt like I could get more regular feedback, more thorough feedback, and I did. And from there, I've just kind of stayed in-house because I really enjoy wearing multiple hats. I like doing a bit of UX and brand and CRM and all of that. But some people might prefer to stay freelance. Some people might prefer to go to agencies. It really depends.
Amazing. Thank you so much for giving such a detailed answer and describing your path. So cool to hear how passionate you were, and then just kind of wanted to get your hands on all the reading that you could get, and just really, feel passionate about this. You already kind of started answering my next question, which is basically, what 3 pieces of advice would you give to your junior self when starting out as a copywriter, and why? So I guess you already kind of mentioned, like the spec work that you did, but maybe there's some other things you can mention as well.
Yeah. So I would say spec work, number 1. Number 2, I would say, really, as I mentioned again, networking. So try to go to in-person events. Don't be afraid to reach out to people on LinkedIn either. I know it's not the easiest, but there are a number of get-togethers and meetups. I kind of did make one copywriter friend who then sort of took me to some events, and that really helped me get my foot in the door for my first in-house role. And then in terms of if you are starting out in-house, or you are starting out really, whether you're freelance, anything, do not be afraid to ask questions. I think it's really, really common when you're a junior to feel like you need to say yes to everything and just do it. You're like, yep, no problem, that makes perfect sense. And then you get halfway through and you realize maybe it doesn't make perfect sense. It doesn't mean it doesn't make perfect sense because you're junior. Sometimes stakeholders can give you bad briefs. And the beauty of becoming more senior, I think, is that you do gain an eye for being able to flag potential pitfalls before they happen, anticipate them, and then ask necessary questions to avoid situations like that. But even when you're junior and you're mid-level, don't be afraid to ask for clarity if something isn't clear. Don't be afraid to ask. As I said, if you get a link, if you're building an ad, where is it going to? Who is our audience? What is our metric for success? I mean, asking these really tough questions are necessary for everybody. So don't be afraid to really get in there.
Cool. Yeah, great answer. I think what you mentioned is so important, that I think, like, sometimes it seems obvious that asking a question is important, but I think we tend to forget about that. So I think it's good that you reiterated on that. Amazing, thanks. So one other thing I wanted to ask you is, what is your favorite thing about being a copywriter? And maybe also, what is your least favorite thing to do?
To do.
To as a copywriter.
My favorite thing about being a copywriter is probably just that every week is different, at least in kind of the role that I have. I think for most people, that is the case. Some people might prefer to regularly do the same task. Yeah, I think my favorite part is being able to combine different passions I have, such as this interest in psychology, writing, learning about business trends, and then using all of that to do various different challenges every single week. So there is this diversity. It does stay fresh. As much as you could be on a project that isn't your favorite, it will end and then something new will come along that you'll be kind of rejuvenated about again. Least favorite part. I think least favorite. No, I mean,
It's a bit tricky.
I know. Well, it's I guess what it comes to mind is maybe like sometimes the educational element of it. I can really enjoy it, but I think at times educating many stakeholders frequently due to the fact that you have this kind of overarching viewpoint over many different teams and the way that they interact and what different channels need in order to be successful is a very unique skill set, which is nice to have. But not everyone you work with has that. So you should factor in time to spend kind of educating people as to what's needed for a project to move forward as efficiently as possible. As maybe one example.
Okay, interesting. So if I understood you correctly, you mean that like as a copywriter, you have to be on top of everything and everyone that you're working with, and you have to like constantly educate yourself. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of project management, which I think is really rewarding and fun. But depending on the week, if you have a busier week than others, sometimes it's not the most convenient week to take on that sort of educational project management role. But again, you could anticipate that by taking a quieter week to build out templates, to do that kind of preemptive educational work so that when a larger project comes along that you need to focus on, then you can do that, So it's all kind of learning.
Yeah, cool. That makes sense. Well, I think it's a really good sign that you needed such a long time to even think about something negative, and that you just generally love your job. So that's super nice to hear. Cool. My next question would be, and this is a super popular question that we get asked a lot these days, and no matter the course that we're talking about or the field that we're talking about. So maybe you can answer this one for me. And the question is, how do you think will ChatGPT impact copywriting? And do you have any experience using this tool so far in your professional life?
Yeah. Glad you asked. Knew it was coming. I think it wouldn't be 2023 if we didn't talk about ChatGPT. Yeah, look, I mean, it's going to impact copywriting. I cannot pretend to be prescient or see the future. I can say that we have yet to see where it's going to go. There's a lot of elements involved. I think the number one concern in terms of copywriting is around plagiarism. I don't think it's going to be a direct hindrance if you are a copywriter who is using ChatGPT to do your work for you. You might have trouble making a strong argument with your private clients or with your employer as to the added value that you're bringing to the company over automation. But I don't think copywriters are going to be doing that. So I don't think that that's an issue. I think you need to continue to be thinking outside of the box, as we all kind of always should be. So it is a very powerful tool. It is useful. I have started using it not to write things for me, but what it's been very useful for is the best example would be with writer's block. Not every single day, not every single hour of every single day is going to be the most inspirational moment of your life. You may have a timeline that is not terribly friendly to whatever you have going on in the background in order to kind of write the copy you want to write. But ChatGPT can be really, really good for helping you just sort of come up with different ideas or things to spark off of. It is a very powerful tool, but it is absolutely not a copywriter. It's not a writer at all. It produces text, but it doesn't produce text in a way that is emotionally meaningful, in a storytelling manner, in a human manner. And I don't think it will anytime soon. It probably will advance. But that just means that we need to remain a step ahead. We should be informed about it. We should know how to use it. And we should know how to work alongside it, not against it. I will say, as just a last caveat, for people who are looking to get into the field, especially if you are looking to move in-house, that may become slightly more challenging, in which case I can only recommend that you be very well-versed in ChatGPT and automation tools and understanding how you can make that case that you are bringing added value over ChatGPT, which should come very naturally. You know, if this is something you're passionate about, if you do have the skill sets we've kind of talked about, I don't think it's going to be a huge uphill battle, and I really wouldn't be too afraid. I think if anything, it's going to be very useful. So.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for such a well thought out answer. I think you, answered so many people's concerns about this. And I think what we hear a lot from all of our experts really is that learn to use ChatGPT and don't be afraid of it. But I think I really like what you said about how it is not a human being. It does not know how to write emotionally. And yeah, I feel like I also sometimes use it for inspiration. I think it's really great for that, but it does produce rather generic, pieces of text. So I don't think anyone should like rely on it 100%, but kind of use it as a helping tool. Cool. There was some questions we got from LinkedIn. So I'm gonna go and ask these now. I just wanted to say that I'm trying my best to pronounce everyone's name. If I mispronounce them, it's not on purpose. So try my best here. So this question is from Alina, and they're asking, what are some effective ways to structure your copy to maximize engagement and conversions? That's a very great question.
It is. I might give an annoying answer because of course, it really, really, really depends on who you're talking to and the channel you're using, the length of the copy. But there's a few things. Engage people emotionally. We always have to kind of operate within the brand and the brand personality, so we can't, I don't know, you can't just like go totally rogue for the sake of like maintaining engagement if it has nothing to do with the brand on any other touch point. But within the guidelines of your brand, consider keeping the copy very concise, consider using action verbs, consider using various punctuation that will help people just sort of scan through text in a way that makes them feel that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Consider useful line breaks, avoid big blocks of text. No one's excited about that. These are maybe just a few ideas. Consider bolding, consider italics, underlines. But like, again, you have brand guidelines that are going to tell you what you can and can't do within those regulations. You can try to do something that really stands out, like whether maybe you use a personal anecdote, maybe you tell a personal story, maybe you make a joke, as long as that joke is appropriate in that location. And as far as converting people, maybe controversial. I guess I feel like we need to ask ourselves how quickly we want to do that. I think everybody is so used to seeing marketing materials all day long, every day, that being too pushy, I don't know that that is the name of the game. As I mentioned before with Gen Z and millennials, people are really purchasing with kind of their heart. They want to align emotionally with the brand. So consider how you can really build a relationship with people, not just sell them things. I don't think anyone wants to live in that world. So for converting, I would consider, how you can build out a whole brand storyline that is emotional, that feels personal, that feels like something people want to be part of, rather than, these are really cool shoes and you're going to love how you look in them. So I know that's very broad. It does depend on the brand. It depends on the channel. It depends on the audience, and it depends on where in the funnel the audience is. How familiar are they with us? But keep it personal, keep it friendly, keep it direct. And also study competitors. You don't want to sound like your competitors. So how do you do that? How do you do what you're doing and what they're doing in a different way that's better, that's unique, that is going to engage customers? That's how you convert people. But it can be a long game.
Okay, wow, great answer. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I think especially what you said about trying to be relatable and like trying to like build an emotional connection with your audience, and also not rushing it. I think that's really important. Like what you said about not being too pushy. I feel like that kind of marketing doesn't really work for our generation anymore, like you said. Super interesting though. Cool. I hope, Alina, that this has satisfied you and answered your question. Next question is from Carla. And they're asking, what are some common mistakes that digital marketers make when it comes to copywriting? Jillian.
Yeah, there's so many. I really do. No, I mean, number one is it's probably not knowing your brand, not knowing your product, or not knowing your audience, or all of them. It's being kind of tone deaf in the way that you speak. Maybe another one is not everybody needs to be a copywriter, but it's certainly, what copywriters bring, other than that kind of written talent, is that research, is understanding who they're writing for, how they should kind of sound, and making sure that those communications are informed by data, informed by the audience, informed by your market research, if you can do that. Other mistakes are, of course, typos. So probably just bad grammar or typos. We live in Germany, so there is a lot of we do see a lot of people who maybe are writing in not their native language. I would love to say that should be a non-issue, but it does persist as a challenge when it comes to converting an audience. We want advertisements to sound the way we sound, and we want to feel like we're speaking to somebody that we know, or hearing from someone we know. And if we read an advertisement that doesn't quite sound native to us, it will take us out of that mentality that we would need to be in order to convert. So that's unfortunately also something that digital marketers may overlook. It is important to have somebody who can write at a native level, or at least can consult somebody who does speak the language in a native level. So those are a couple tips, a couple pitfalls I've seen.
Okay, amazing tips. Thank you. Carla, yeah, I hope that has been helpful. Again, I think Jillian could probably mention a lot more, but those are the main ones, really. Cool. I have a bit of a longer one here from Bridget. I'm going to read this out and hope that we can answer her question as well. So Bridget is saying, I recently completed the CF data analytics program. Well done, Bridget. But have found myself in a second round of interviews for marketing account manager at a consulting firm. I'm packaging myself as a multifaceted candidate with a strong history in customer relations. Any additional advice on how to best present myself as the manager who not only presents the insights, but finds them as well? So fusing interpersonal skills with data insights, basically. Do you have any advice for Bridget?
Well, I'd say, well, number one, thanks. That's lovely, and congratulations. I would say you're already on a really good path. The fact that you're thinking outside of the box, you're thinking about how you can be this candidate that rises above other candidates. You're not just a data analyst with a, who's graduated. You are also, you have these management skills, you have these writing skills. Maybe one other thing you can tie in is that you are data driven, that you are very passionate about that research element, about understanding what the needs of others are, so that you can be that liaison between whether it's like an external audience we write for, or colleagues, or people that you manage. You do your best to understand the perspective of others so that you can bring people together, and you can impart clearer communication and the most accurate information possible to your reports or your audience or interviewers. So you're obviously passionate about data as a data analyst, but you also want to be passionate about how that kind of research informs your decision making. It's not just all gut instincts that motivates you, right? It's kind of all of it packaged together with those inherent interpersonal skills and that desire to liaise between all of the moving parts that really makes you the full package.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for that. Bridget, I hope this has been helpful. Cool. I'm going to move on to the next question that is here in big marker. So Kushbu is asking, is social media or website content marketing the same?
No, typically not. I mean, typically not. So social media, yeah, websites are a funny one because they can sit on a few different teams depending on the product. It could be considered products realm because it is ultimately UX. It is ultimately the user experience. That said, there's a good argument that says that you do need brand work within it in order to build out that identity and your product and that personality. It really depends on the product. If it's an app, especially with the website, I would say it's going to probably definitely sit on product. Social media is always in marketing. It's always considered digital marketing, and it's always considered organic because there's no money behind it. When we talk about unpaid social media, we can also do paid social media, which still will sit with, well, no, it would then sit on the performance team because they hold the coin purse in terms of pushing paid advertisements outwards. And then you would have creatives come in. Again, all of this is informed by our brand guidelines and that brand personality. Depending on the way that your company is set up, you might do both. I myself will work on both here at CareerFoundry, but that's not always the case. At a larger company, it wouldn't be likely. We might even have a copywriter who's dedicated to paid advertisement and performance. That's kind of a new trend now. That's dictated by really Google and what they require from creative. So yeah, website and social media are quite different, but they don't have to be. I hope that answers your question. I know it can be a little bit convoluted, so I do apologize for that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, super interesting about the differences there. Thanks for answering that. Yeah, I really also do hope, Kushbu, that this has answered your question. Just looking at the time, I'm going to just go with one last question. And I wanted to ask, so how do you stay up to date with the latest tools and technologies and best practices as a copywriter? Is there anything that you can recommend to us?
Yeah. So number one, I will say that I don't constantly spend my energy reading books that are within my field. I do think it's also important that I consume media that is external to my field. And I would say the same for anybody else. But when I am doing that, I might use my professional development budget, for example, to take an SEO course. I'll buy new copywriting books as they come out, and I notice them within my kind of LinkedIn network, and they're creating a buzz. I'll buy those. I'll read those as they come out. I will take courses that come up that to me feel reasonably priced, but also relevant to what I want to improve in. So the last one I did was like headline writing faster or something like that. I can't remember the exact title, but it was Dan Nelken, the book I recommended in, the last slide. I am on a number of newsletters. I think that's important. Yeah, so it depends. I check in on LinkedIn regularly as well and follow a few of my favorites. And then lately I've been really playing around with ChatGPT and kind of reading up on that and how I think that's going to impact the copywriting market. That's been what's really grabbed my attention lately. And so that's been a little bit different from kind of the more traditional resources I've used in the past.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much. Wow, there's so many different resources that one can use. So thank you for mentioning some of them. I also just put up the last slide up again so that people can have a look at your recommended reading list and some of the sources you just mentioned, but we will also be sending that out in our follow-up email along with the recording. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jillian, for this great presentation and for answering all of our questions. And thank you, everyone, so much for joining us tonight. I hope that you found this presentation as inspiring as me and that we answered all of your questions. And just before we wrap up, I wanted to remind people that we have a fantastic blog here at CareerFoundry, run by our brilliant team of editors. And we have a lot of great articles on there about all of our programs, about digital marketing, how to improve your copywriting skills as well, if you want to get even more tips apart from what we already spoke about today. And also, if you want to watch some videos on the topic, check out our CareerFoundry YouTube channel. There's also a lot of great content on there. And of course, if you like this event, we would love to see you at the next event. You can go to our website and see all the upcoming events there and register for that. And lastly, if you found this presentation inspiring and maybe you're considering a career in digital marketing or any other tech field and you're just not sure which one is the right fit for you, you can book a free call with one of our program advisors. And I mentioned this in the beginning, you have the sticky note here in Big Marker, and when you click that, you will be redirected to the booking page, so you can book your free call there. And they're lovely, and they're going to answer all of your questions. So if you're considering a career change, also know that we're currently offering our Career Change Scholarship. And if you would opt into the digital marketing program, for example, you can get up to $1,125 or 1,125 euros off the full price of our digital marketing. So that's just something to consider. However, if you're maybe not sure yet if digital marketing is the right fit for you, then we can also recommend taking our free short course, and we're going to post the link to that in the chat in a little bit. Again, thank you so much, Jillian. This has been super lovely, and again, thank you everyone for joining. And do you have any last words for us?
Yeah, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you for your lovely questions. I hope I was able to give you a little bit of clarity on that. I know it can be broad. So thank you all for being here and sticking around until the end. And I'm wishing everybody a lovely evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Wishing you all a lovely rest of the day.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Goodbye from Berlin. Have a good morning, evening, or afternoon, wherever you are. Until next time. Bye, everyone.